The three most fearsome warrior groups in history. Did you know that some warriors in history fought not for gold or kings but for the sheer honor of battle itself? They lived by the sword. They died by the code. And their names still echo through time as symbols of courage and discipline. Today we step into the world of the three most fearsome warrior groups in history. Men who stood at the edge of civilization and carved their legends in fire and steel. Let's begin in the mist-covered islands of early Japan. A land divided by rival clans and endless wars. Here emerged a class of warriors whose very name would one day define loyalty and duty. The samurai. Their origins trace back to the Heian period, when noble families sought armed retainers to protect their lands. Over centuries, these retainers evolved into a distinct warrior elite, bound by a strict moral code, known as Bushido *. The way of the warrior, the samurai were more than soldiers. They were a living philosophy. Honor to them was life itself. Death was merely the price of failing it. From childhood, a samurai was trained in martial arts, strategy, poetry, and philosophy. His sword was not only his weapon, but an extension of his soul. The forging of a katana was considered a sacred act. The blade folded again and again until it reached a perfect balance of strength and grace. Let's pause and picture this. A samurai kneeling before dawn. His armor glinting faintly in the first light. His hair tied in a simple knot. His hand resting lightly on the hilt of his sword. He waits in silence, not for orders, but for purpose. To fight for honor, to live by it, to die by it. During the Sengoku era, Japan was a battlefield of constant turmoil. Clan fought against clan, villages burned, loyalties shifted like the wind. But amidst this chaos, the samurai held fast to their code. When death approached, they did not run. They bowed. A samurai who failed his master could atone only through seppuku ritual suicide performed with calm dignity. To outsiders, it seemed grim, but to the samurai, it was beauty in its purest form. The acceptance of fate without fear. Let's float over to another age, another land, where frozen winds swept across endless plains and horsemen thundered like storms. Here rode the Mongols, a people forged by the harshness of the steppe. From childhood, they learned to ride, to hunt, and to survive. Their leader was a man whose name still trembles in the annals of history. Genghis Khan. Born as Temujin in the late 12th century, he rose from hardship and betrayal to unite the warring Mongol tribes. What followed was nothing short of transformation. Under his command, the Mongols became the greatest military force the world had ever seen. They rode small but tireless horses. They carried composite bows that could pierce armor from hundreds of yards away. Their tactics were fast, precise, and mercilessly effective. Imagine an army that moved like smoke across the land. Invisible until the moment of attack. They struck in perfect coordination, feigned retreats to draw enemies in, then encircled them with breathtaking speed. Cities fell before they even understood who they were fighting. But the Mongols were not mere destroyers. They built roads, fostered trade, and spread knowledge across Asia and Europe. The Silk Road thrived under their watch. Scholars, merchants, and travelers could move freely across their vast empire. The secret of their success lay in discipline. Each soldier carried his own food and gear. No one lagged behind. Orders were obeyed instantly. A single signal could shift an entire army. Genghis Khan believed in loyalty and merit, not birth or title. Even a humble herdsman could rise to lead if he proved his worth in battle. Let's drift back for a moment to understand what made these warriors truly fearsome. It was not only skill, it was unity. The samurai fought as extensions of their master's will. The Mongols fought as one body under one vision. Every arrow, every blade, every horse was part of something larger, something unstoppable. As the Mongols expanded westward, they encountered fortified cities unlike any they had seen. Yet even stone walls could not save their foes. They mastered siege engines and gunpowder weapons captured from China. They studied every enemy they faced and adapted faster than anyone thought possible. The Khwarazm Empire, the Jin dynasty, the Kievan Rus, all fell before their relentless advance. Let's take a breath before the next march of history, for our final group awaits in another part of the world. Across the scorching deserts and stony fortresses of the Middle East, warriors whose discipline was matched only by their faith, the Knights Templar. But before we meet them, we must understand the world they lived in. The time was the 12th century. Europe was aflame with a call to reclaim the Holy Land. Crusaders set sail to capture Jerusalem. Yet the roads were dangerous. Bandits, warlords, and rival armies roamed freely. Pilgrims needed protection. Out of this chaos rose a brotherhood unlike any other. Monks who took up arms. Soldiers who swore vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Their symbol was simple yet powerful, a red cross upon a white cloak. The cross for faith, the white for purity. They called themselves the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. The world knew them as the Knights Templar. They trained not for wealth or glory, but for duty. They guarded pilgrims, built castles, and fought in battles that shaped the fate of nations. Their discipline was unmatched. In combat, they rode in formation like a single moving wall. They did not break ranks. They did not retreat. Their courage inspired allies and terrified enemies. As night falls on this first part of our journey, we leave the samurai in the rising sun. The Mongols under endless sky. The Templars awaiting the dawn of battle. Each bound by code, faith, or destiny. Each carved from the same unyielding stone of human will. The rise and fall of honor. Let's open the next page of this journey and step into the heartbeat of power. Every warrior code begins with purpose but ends with consequence. The samurai, the Mongols, and the Knights Templar all rose through discipline and unity. Yet the same forces that built their greatness would one day test their honor, loyalty, and survival. We begin again in Japan, where the samurai reached their golden age under the Tokugawa shogunate. After centuries of civil war, the land finally found peace. But peace came with a price. For the samurai, whose lives had revolved around battle, the sword no longer had purpose. Their armor gathered dust. Their code met silence. Without war, their place in society began to fade. Let's pause for a moment and imagine a samurai walking through Edo's quiet streets. His armor traded for silk robes. His sword, once drenched in battle, now a mere symbol of rank. He bows politely to passers-by, but inside he feels hollow. The way of the warrior had become the way of memory. As peace settled across Japan, many samurai turned to poetry, philosophy, and politics. Some became teachers. Others became scholars. Yet others grew restless and angry. They missed the simplicity of purpose that war had given them. The code of Bushido still guided them, but the world had changed. Firearms replaced swords. Modern armies replaced feudal loyalties. The final blow came in the late 19th century during the Meiji Restoration, when the new government sought to modernize Japan. The wearing of swords was banned. The samurai class was dissolved. Their titles lost meaning. Their culture began to fade into legend. But their spirit did not die. It transformed. The discipline of the samurai became the backbone of modern Japan, its education, its industry, its sense of duty. Their honor still breathes in every act of perseverance and respect. Now let's float across the mountains and deserts back to the Mongols. After Genghis Khan's death, his empire stretched farther than any before it, from the Pacific to the edge of Europe. His sons and grandsons divided it into vast khanates. Each ruled with the same precision, yet unity slowly began to crumble. Ambition, greed, and distance weakened their bonds. The Mongols continued to expand, yet the fire of their leadership began to cool. Kublai Khan rose as the most powerful among them, ruling from the great capital of Kambalik, modern Beijing. Under his reign, the Yuan dynasty brought art, trade, and architecture to new heights. But even as the empire shone in grandeur, cracks began to appear beneath its golden surface. The steppe-born warriors had become emperors. The nomads had built cities. Their horses rested. Their bows hung on palace walls. The fierce simplicity that had once driven them was slowly replaced by politics and comfort. The vast empire that once moved as one body began to drift apart. Communication stretched too thin. Revolts stirred in distant provinces. The Mongols, who had conquered through speed and unity, could not rule through division. One by one, their territories broke away. The Golden Horde in Russia faded. The Ilkhanate in Persia dissolved. And by the 15th century, the once unstoppable storm of horsemen had quieted into history. Yet their mark remained. Trade routes flourished because of them. Cultures intertwined. The echoes of their empire still hum beneath the fabric of Eurasia. Let's move again across time to the heart of Europe, where the Templars stood at the height of their power. They had grown from a humble order of protectors into one of the most powerful institutions in the world. Kings borrowed money from them. Popes relied on them. Their castles guarded key routes from Europe to the Holy Land. Their fleet carried supplies and pilgrims across the sea. But power, once noticed, invites envy. As the Crusades waned and Christian control over Jerusalem faded, the Templars' purpose was questioned. They were rich, disciplined, and loyal to no single king. And that made them dangerous. In France, King Philip IV saw an opportunity. He owed vast debts to the Templars. To erase them, he devised a plan. On a cold dawn in 1307, his soldiers swept across the kingdom, arresting every Templar they could find. They were accused of heresy, blasphemy, and secret rituals. The charges were false but deadly. Under torture, confessions were forced. Their lands were seized. Their leaders imprisoned. Let's imagine one last scene. Jacques de Molay, the final Grand Master of the Templars, stands bound before a crowd in Paris. The setting sun reflects on the Seine. The flames rise. He does not beg. He does not break. Before the fire consumes him, he calls out a curse upon those who condemned his brothers. Within a year, both the king and the pope were dead. The order was gone, yet its mystery lived on. Stories of hidden treasure, secret knowledge, and underground brotherhoods grew through the centuries. The Red Cross vanished from banners, but never from imagination. So what binds these warriors together? The samurai, the Mongols, and the Templars all lived by codes that reached beyond life itself. They were feared not because they sought power, but because they served purpose. Each believed in something larger than victory, a master, a god, a destiny. But every age ends when its purpose fades, when swords are replaced by laws, when faith gives way to politics, when unity cracks under pride. Yet what they left behind still shapes the world we live in, their ideas of honor, discipline, loyalty, and order. Let's open the final chapter of our journey. The age of the sword may have ended, but the spirit that forged it still walks among us. The samurai, the Mongols, and the Knights Templar have long vanished from the fields of battle, yet their lessons breathe through the centuries. Their courage became tradition. Their discipline became culture. Their honor became legend. Let's begin once more in the East, where the samurai first drew their blades. When Japan entered the modern era, their warriors could no longer live by Bushido as a class, but the code did not vanish. It simply shifted form. Bushido became the moral backbone of Japanese identity. It inspired the nation's sense of respect, self-control, and perseverance. Even today, echoes of that code can be seen in daily life. In the way one bows with sincerity. In the way one works with care. In the way honor is treated not as a word, but as a duty. The idea that discipline brings strength and humility brings peace has shaped everything from martial arts to modern business ethics. In Kendo and Judo, the spirit of the samurai continues. Every bow, every step, every strike carries centuries of silent wisdom. The lesson that mastery is not just in victory, but in calmness of the mind. Let's drift again to the vast plains once thundered upon by the Mongol riders. The empire they built may have fallen, yet its impact never faded. They connected the East and West in ways the world had never seen. They protected trade across the Silk Road, which became the lifeline of global exchange. Ideas, inventions, and languages flowed freely. Paper, printing, gunpowder, and astronomy spread through their networks. The Mongols taught the world that discipline and adaptability could conquer any challenge. Their mobility inspired later military strategies used by armies centuries ahead. Even in defeat, they left behind systems of governance that influenced future empires. Genghis Khan's rule showed that merit, not blood, could lead a nation. A principle that remains central to modern leadership. Yet perhaps the greatest legacy of the Mongols lies in their vision of unity. They saw the world not as separate kingdoms, but as one great step of humanity. Different tribes, different tongues, but all under the same endless sky. Their empire was a harsh lesson that connection, once forged, changes history forever. Let us move now toward the old castles of Europe, where the Templar crosses once waved proudly in the wind. Though their order was crushed by kings, their ideals refused to die. From their ashes rose myths and movements. Some were tales of hidden relics. Others were visions of brotherhood and faith. Yet beyond the mystery, their true legacy lies in the foundation of structure and discipline. The Templars were among the first to create a network of finance and protection across continents. They invented early systems of banking, allowing travelers to deposit money in one place and withdraw it safely in another. Their organization inspired later military orders, secret societies, and even modern charitable institutions. The idea that faith and duty can coexist with structure became their gift to the future. In many ways, the Templars' courage redefined the image of the soldier. They fought not for conquest, but for conviction. Their loyalty was to a cause that lived beyond them. Today, that same spirit lives on in those who serve with honor, whether in the military, in rescue, or in the quiet service of others. Let's take a slow step back and look at these three worlds together. The samurai taught the value of discipline and integrity. The Mongols showed the strength of unity and strategy. The Templars revealed the power of faith and brotherhood. Though separated by continents and centuries, they shared one truth: that true strength lies not in domination but in devotion. When we think of fearsome warriors, we often imagine blades and battle cries. But their greatest weapon was something unseen: a mind steady under fire, a heart unwavering in purpose. That is what made them invincible. Let's pause for a moment and picture them together across time. The samurai beneath the cherry blossoms of Kyoto. The Mongol rider on his horse against the sunset that stretches to infinity. The Templar knight kneeling before his sword in the stillness of dawn. Three warriors from three worlds, bound by one thread. The eternal will to serve something greater than themselves. Their empires fell. Their orders ended. Their swords rusted into dust. Yet the spirit they carried moved onward into every soldier who fights with discipline. Every leader who serves with humility. Every person who chooses duty over desire. As we stand in the modern age of machines and technology, the echo of those ancient footsteps still follows us. The lessons of Bushido whisper in codes of honor. The Mongol vision breathes in global unity. The Templar vow lives in the hearts of those who believe that faith and courage can stand against any power. Let's end this journey not with an ending, but with reflection. The most fearsome warriors in history were not defined by the blood they spilled, but by the purpose that guided their hands. Their stories remind us that greatness is not about victory, it is about balance, loyalty, and devotion to a higher path. The samurai taught us to fight within ourselves before facing the world. The Mongols taught us to move swiftly and adapt to every storm. The Templars taught us to protect what is sacred, even when the world turns against us. And so, their spirit continues to walk beside us. Not as shadows of the past, but as quiet teachers of the present. When courage falters, we can still hear their whisper. When duty calls, we can still feel their strength. When honor is tested, we can still remember the calm eyes of those who stood before us, unbroken, unyielding, and eternal. That is the true legacy of the warrior spirit. And that is why the samurai, the Mongols, and the Knights Templar remain, even today, the three most fearsome warriors in history.